Hello and welcome to the Tachiai podcast. We are just 1 week away from the May tournament, and I have with us the clan of the podcast. First of all, our man in foreign lands, Josh. Say hello.
Konbanwa from Tokyo.
Yes, that's right. It's evening time in Tokyo. And joining us is the creator, mastermind, and all-around cool guy from Tachiai, Andy. Hello, Andy.
Hi. Hey, Bruce. Hey, Josh.
Hey.
So this is our first podcast of the Reiwa era. We've had a change of monarchy in Japan. And I don't know if the rest of you get wrapped up in some of this Japanese cultural stuff, but it was neat to watch. Because for a change, you have a change in the imperial throne, and there isn't a period of mourning to come first. It was just like, yep, we'll leave the mourning to the side and just celebrate like mad. Thoughts about, we've stated for a while that sumo's in a bit of a transitional period. We've already lost 2 yokozuna. Anyone care to comment on thoughts around Reiwa? Josh, go first.
Sure. So I'm in Japan right now, and it's been, as you said, a really cool and interesting week. I mean, there's not too many of us, certainly as fans, or too many people in Japan who have experienced many changes in an era in their lifetime. And to have this happen for the first time in centuries in the time not of mourning was something that was really special. And I think a lot of people, friends of mine here that I've talked to, have just said how pleasant the moment has been to remember an emperor who, was really just full of happiness and happy thoughts and peaceful thoughts for the people here, and always stood by, the people here throughout the country, no matter what happened to the country of Japan. And I think that, the folks that I've talked to, it's their hope that that will continue. And it's a time of optimism, at least it feels that way. So, hopefully there's been so many events in the last week, and there's so many more to come as we get through this, this first month, the enthronement, I guess, if that's the word. There's just so much happening here right now, and I think the hope is that that happiness and that peaceful period and optimistic period will just continue.
Yep. Andy, thoughts around the change of monarchy?
I've heard that the new emperor enjoys like quite a bit of popularity, and I think I had heard that either their daughter or one of the other young princesses was a big fan of sumo. And although I'd heard that, probably around with the scandals and stuff, the imperial family has understandably stepped away from it at times. So I'm hoping that, fingers crossed, scandals stay away. Yep. And the imperial family is then able to, really enjoy sumo, and especially now that it's really gaining in popularity. So hopefully they can just kind of feed off of each other.
I'm going to be very interested to see what the public reaction is the first time the new emperor visits the Kokugi-kan. Yeah. Should be interesting to see. So we do, in fact, have the first Banzuke of the Reiwa era that has come out. Lots of interesting and tumultuous stuff, some of which we'll get into with our Genki report. But Andy, reactions to this Banzuke?
It was sad to see Ikiyoi and Chiyonokuni get the drop, yep. But it was definitely needed. And I'm fairly certain we won't see Chiyonokuni at all. We probably will see Ikiyoi, but I wouldn't be. I guess I wouldn't mind it if he decided to take the tournament off as well. I was sad to see Toyonoshima go back down, but he'll hang around in Juryo for a while. Arawashi's coming back. It'll be interesting to see if he can go a full 15 days this time. I mean, he went the full 15 days last time, but he went on that little losing schneid there at the end. I'm obviously excited to see Enho and Terutsuyoshi. That whole there's a whole cluster of guys: Enho, Kotoeko, Terutsuyoshi, Ishiura, Chiyoshoma. Like, all these guys are down in the low 100 kilogram weight limit. So I'll be very interested to see who in that cluster, because they're like all right there together, who survives right down there at the bottom of the Banzuke, in Makuuchi.
Yeah, agility
And
sumo coming up for our tournament.
well, my big question coming out of that is who will Ishira Henka? Because
Hiroshima.
that we may have a double Henka there.
Yeah, it's been a long time since someone unleashed a double Henka. I think it's time we have one, hopefully filmed in 4K. Josh, reactions to the Banzuke?
Yeah, it wouldn't be full contact sumo. It'd be no contact sumo, which would be interesting. I'll just talk about two names that are exciting to me, and they'll be, I think exciting to a lot of people, perhaps new to some people. Shimano Umi is a new name for a lot of sumo fans, but he's actually on the older side for Rikishi making his top division debut. He's almost 30, but he lost a year of his career to injury, so he's got a little less miles on the tank, even if that means he's got some questions about his solidity. But he's won 2 Yusho in a row down in Juryo, and I think he's an interesting one for me this tournament because he's in this stable, Kisebe, which is kind of notorious for getting these guys up to Juryo and not really much further. And there's a number of them in the top of Makushita as well. But ever since Gagamaru kind of fell away, and you had Ura, who's in the same stable, he got injured. They haven't really been able to push these like 7, 8, 9, 10 guys they've gotten Juryo and Makushita up to Makuuchi, but here comes Shimano Umi almost out of nowhere, 2 Yusho in a row. He's primarily an Oshi man, but he won his first Juryo Yusho with 8 different techniques, so he's got a little bit more in his locker. When he's confident going forward, I think he looks really good. He did have 4 Makekoshi in his first 5 Juryo tournaments, so it means, maybe he might struggle in his first basho at the level, but he looks pretty good for an older guy, making his first top division appearance. The second one, obviously, is Enho.
Oh, yeah.
And I would just say, to start, it's really cool to see him up here because, like Tomokaze, he's someone who we've covered on the site since his very first basho. He's another Hakuho recruit, and so it was nice to see a photo that was circulating this week of Hakuho with 2 attendants from his stable, Enho and Ishiura, as he did his Doyo Iri. I had a really good kind of spirited debate with Haruth, who we should obviously all pay tribute to again for
Thank you, Haruth.
Thank you, Haruth.
Junyo coverage. We were going back and forth about the ceiling of Enho. Right? What can Enho accomplish in his career now that he's arrived and he's made it in the top division? And I think the prevailing wisdom with a lot of folks is like, can he eventually be Mainumi, who a lot of people know if you've been watching sumo from the 90s or you watch highlights, and he also is a commentator now in the Japanese feed quite frequently, a very popular guy. And my feeling was I don't think we have enough information yet, and we're going to start to get more of it about Enho this basho because sure, he's primarily going to face like bottom of the division, yo-yo guys, and maybe a Juryo visitor. But I think it's going to be the first tournament that sees him paired somewhere in the Torikumi with a legitimate Makuuchi mainstay. Yep. And I want to see how he copes with that because, I think we've seen enough about how he deals with like Kotoyuki and Tokushoryu, no disrespect to those guys. So if we see him up against a real technical Rikishi, I think it's going to tell us a lot about him.
Well, I mean, he's within range of Onosho, Shohozan, right? Yeah. So, personally, Shohozan versus Enho, that's going to be very interesting to watch. Yeah, it really is. I can't wait to see some of that stuff. Yeah. So, for folks who only get to watch the highlight reels from NHK, and by the way, that may be all there is really to pick through this tournament. More of that in a second. It's going to be great for you guys to finally see this little powerhouse Enho. And for those of you who haven't noticed, Kintama Yama, aka Moti, has decided that he's going to go Kyujo for a while, and we salute that decision because the guy is an absolute machine at providing the world with English language sumo video or just sumo video highlights that cover all of the matches. So he's taking some time off. Word has it he may be in Tokyo for part of the Natsu basho, and we wish him luck. But for those of you who have grown accustomed or perhaps even addicted to his early morning blast of sumo goodness, guess what? It's back to NHK only for you guys, unless there's some other source that shows up. So as far as I'm concerned, reaction to this Banzuke this is another great step on the evolutionary journey, and we'll get into some of this stuff once we start talking Genki. But you've got Shin Ozeki now, in the form of Takayasu. Thank you, Josh, for that one. It's highly appropriate. And that he's a very controversial figure, which surprised the daylights out of me. There are people arguing over. I mean, we have John Gunning saying, yeah, this is probably the best he's going to do. And he presents some very well-reasoned arguments, but at the same time, in a transitional period, if you stop assuming there's a Hakuho, what does this guy actually have as far as potential? You've got Ichinojo suddenly remembering that he's capable of some amazing sumo, and he's at Sekiwaki 1 East, and he's joined at that rank by an Ozeki Waukee in the form of Tochi Shin, who 10 wins away from gaining Ozeki back, and I know everyone hopes that he's Genki and can pull it off. But speaking of Genki, let's launch into our Genki report. For folks who are new to the podcast, we frequently talk about who's hot and who's not. And there is no better place to start right now than the ultimate sumotori Hakuho, who gave his bicep a bit of a tear at the end of the Osaka basho, and has been a little gentle and a little delicate with it since. As always, everyone's guarded about his actual condition, but as soon as you say muscle tear, everyone thinks Kisame Sato. We all know that at some point, the greatest Yokozuna, the greatest Rikishi ever to live, will exit the dojo. And everyone is now sort of on pins and needles wondering, is this the career-ending injury? Josh, let's go with you first. Thoughts about Hakuho?
Yeah, this might be a little unpopular, but I don't expect to see him this tournament. Yep. But I don't necessarily think that he's done the wrong thing to rust it. The mistake for me is coming back too soon. And, as you said, Bruce, a lot of folks will make the Kiseno Sato comparison, and I get it. But for me, Kiseno Sato's mistake wasn't just about doing surgery or not doing surgery. It was about the way that his rehab process went and how that was managed, and the fact that he kept getting on the dojo and tournament action with little activity in between. Yeah. And so for me, when you talk about Hakuho, I'd rather see him take a couple of tournaments and then rebuild himself appropriately, take tournaments off, I should say, and then rebuild himself appropriately. And I'm sure the caveat there being that with this being the first tournament of the Reiwa era, he's going to want to put down a marker, and it's going to be one more thing that motivates him. And yep. I just hope that he doesn't do that, and he kind of sees, with 2020 Olympics coming up, we always come back to this, but he can kind of see the forest for the trees and go, all right, let's do this the right way.
Of course, now we're worrying about Hakuho. It's time for another Zen show, but I'm sorry. Go ahead. Andy, your thoughts on Hakuho?
Well, thank you again to Haruth for all of her Jungyo coverage, because we didn't see Hakuho really on the dojo. And that's because, like Josh said, we shouldn't see him on the dojo again until September or even after that. Because, like you said, muscle tear, that's not something to take lightly. And I'm not gonna, second guess or whatever, but I'll just hope that he does the prudent thing and eases himself back into sumo. And the thing is, with him, he was just such a beast for such a long time, so durable, for something like 10 years without going Kyujo. Finally, the last year or so, maybe a little over a year, he's started to have some sort of injury problems leading into 2020. And I don't think that he necessarily has a long-term plan, because this is going to be the twilight of his career. So it's just how he wants to manage that. Will this muscle tear mean that he doesn't have another 15 full days ahead in any tournament? I'm not sure. But I hope that he at least takes a couple of tournaments. He's a Yokozuna. He is the Dai Yokozuna. He deserves to take a couple of tournaments off to at least see where that arm is going.
So as a notorious egotist, I'm going to guess that it's a battle in his noggin over whether he knows that he should probably coax himself along for the long-term endurance play by sitting out a tournament or two versus competing in the first tournament of the Reiwa era. So it's going to probably be a Friday call on whether the boss enters or not. So let's travel a little further down the Banzuke, and I want to talk about Takayasu, who has ignobly taken up his senpai's mantle of the eternal bridesmaid. So Takayasu can perform quite well, but is never really in contention for the Yusho. Well, maybe a little bit here or there, but the end of the day, he can't quite pull it off. If we have Hakuho sit out, or even if we don't, when do we, if ever, see Takayasu claim a Yusho?
This is definitely his best opportunity at it, and I do see this as being his not necessarily just his best chance at a Yusho. I see this as his first Yusho, because the Yokozuna ranks are obviously a bit weak right now. The Ozeki ranks are a bit weak right now. Probably Goedo is going to be his strongest competition. I know that Takayasu is new there, but I think we'll get to that later. But for Takayasu, I do see this as being his best Yusho opportunity.
All right, Josh, thoughts about Takayasu?
I completely agree with Andy. I mean, that was, when we were getting prepared for this, that was exactly what I was thinking. And, it feels like a moment of real opportunity for him, because the big thing is he has not been able consistently to win in the business end of every tournament. If you look at week 2 in his last year of tournaments, he has not been able to finish strongly. And then in the one tournament in the last year when he did finish well, he still lost on Senshiraku to hand Takayasu his first Yusho. So, I don't know what more we can say about him. I don't put a lot of stock in the win-loss reports that come out of like Eiko with Kisanosato or Araiso, as I should say. But, he's technically a very, very, very good Rikishi. And, for me, if we're looking to judge him as we get into this basho, as we start the basho, I would say, look, if he can keep pace or exceed what Kakuryu does in this tournament in the first week, if he can do that, then I think he's probably in pretty good shape going in the second week. And then it's all about how can he finish.
So you mentioned something I think I'll bring up to the fans. Our Aisho, a.k.a. formerly Yokozuna Kisana Sato, has resumed his role as a training maniac. And from all reports, his one goal right now is to beat Takayasu into Yokozuna shape. And so, if anything, right now, the former Kisana Sato is probably in better shape than we saw him in the last 18 months. And he is relentless. So if you weren't following sumo at the time, the way that Takayasu became Ozeki and Kisana Sato became Yokozuna is those two would train hour after hour on every day, on nights, on weekends. They would just go at it eternally, and it brought both of their levels up. And I'm very interested to see reports that this mode of sort of sumo boot camp is back in force. So we may see a different Takayasu, we may not, but I'm definitely keeping a close eye. Let's pivot to the Shin Ozeki, Takayasu. Takayasu is this little bulbous guy with tiny arms that I jokingly refer to his preferred technique as wave action Tsupari, because he does such a good job of getting a rhythmic disruption shoving attack going that it is very difficult for anyone to really put much of a dent into it, although a few have figured out some techniques so far. Josh, tell us, you were one of the people who really got behind Takayasu early. Now he's reached Ozeki. We're probably going to see him snap in for a couple of tournaments, but what are you looking for in terms of, do you think he's going to be hot, not, or just so-so this time?
I'm curious to see what kind of a toll all the parties and duties that come with being Ozeki and the Jungyo have taken on him. He said last time, I think it was before the last tournament after Tamawashi had won the Yusha, I was like, he's 34, he's not going to get fazed by these parties and all this stuff. And then he comes out and he's just like wrecked. He's like, I didn't do any training at all.
Take it from an old man. If you go through a whole rigmarole of parties for a few weeks, you're dragging ass.
I think it would affect all of us, unfortunately. So, look, he does seem like he's not the type of character mentally to get fazed by that. He is only, young. He's 22 or whatever. I could see his promotion being something that puts a target on his back.
Yep.
A little bit like Tochinoshin. He's kind of a one-trick guy, but his trick is kind of weird. But particularly, I think someone, if you're like Takayumi, who was being spoken about in Ozeki terms not too long ago.
Now passed over twice.
And you look at this guy, and he's just like, okay, I'm going to take that guy down. So for me, when you talk about Takakeisho, honestly, if he can get 9 here, it's a good start. If he gets 10, it's a great start. And if he puts up a legitimate challenge, then I think it's going to make things really interesting for the rest of the year in terms of the pressure that puts on the other Ozeki. And the opportunities they could then limit for folks trying to stake a claim in behind him because there's only so many wins. But I'm looking for him to get 9 or 10 here and keep it chilly.
Cool. Andy, thoughts about Takakeisho?
Totally agree with that, because I definitely think that he can pick up a solid 10 on the or even 9 on the virtue of the fact that the higher ranks are so I guess hobbled at the moment.
Yeah.
But now with, I guess, fewer competitors probably going the whole first week, much less the whole tournament, the joy will dip down a bit more into the Maegashira, so he will probably have a bit of a lighter load. Although, I mean, a lot of these guys are not exactly a light load like Abi, but being able to get into Okinomi, who is no stranger to the bottom of the basho, he should be able to pick up a pretty solid 10 wins. But as far as going for a Yusho, I'm still going with Takayasu on that one.
Cool. So let's rotate over to our favorite glass cannon, and thank you very much for that term, the folks and fans who brought it to us. The Ozeki Waukee now. So Tochinoshin, former Ozeki, demoted to Sekiwaki. He's 10 wins away from regaining his Ozeki title. It's all down to, is he healthy? Can he actually use his preferred method, which is absolute monstrous strength to overcome anyone? Andy, thoughts about Tochinoshin?
I think that it's telling that he still wants to use that brute strength, and he was the one loss that Ichinojo had last tournament.
Yep.
But I don't think that he'll be able to do that for the full 15 days. I think he will be very happy with a regular old everyday 8 or 9 kachikoshi.
Yep.
And I doubt we will see him back as an Ozeki. I think that his knee injuries remind me too much of Koto Shogiku. And we may see, hopefully we'll see both of them continue to be solid Maegashira, solid Makuuchi wrestlers for a while. But the only thing that I could see Tochinoshin picking up that 10 is if he really finds another trick quick.
Okay. Josh, thoughts about Tochinoshin, and can he get to 10?
I think he's going to give it a real go. He's such a competitor. If Hakuho does pull out, as we kind of hope and expect that he will, I think it's a real boost for him. Needing 10 wins every match is going to be precious. Don't forget, he hasn't got 10 wins since he became an Ozeki.
Yep.
So if he can take, Ichinojo and maybe one of the four guys who are ranked above him, if Hakuho's not there, maybe two of those guys, then he's got a shot. But the problem is that I can see him losing just three of the guys who are Maegashira guys who are down there in the Joy. So if he's not absolutely 100%, then you think, well, Hokuto Fuji, Tamawashi, Abi, Myogiru, these guys who can be really, really strong in the push and thrust, they can give him problems. And, I agree with Andy. I think that if he doesn't get to 10 this time, then he'll shift back into the Koto Shogiku kind of range. And I think it should give us all a lot of respect for Koto Shogiku because he survived up there on one move for 5.5 years. Yeah. And Tochinoshin lasted 5 tournaments. So, that puts it into sharp relief.
Yeah, I think I'm down with you, Josh. I think it comes down to specifically if Hakuho is in. I see a good shot at 10 wins if Hakuho is out and 9 wins if he's in. So good luck to Tochinoshin. I know everyone is going to be tracking that because it's quite the story. Now, you brought up the one guy who was kind of the interesting surprise, and that was Ichinojo. Is that somehow Ichinojo found his sumo again, and he decided he was no longer going to be passive. He used virtually the same opening stratagem for all of his wins, but it was bloody effective. Stand them up, slap them down. And when you are that big, is there much defense against it? So are we seeing a resurgence in Ichinojo, and can it last, Josh?
He's hot and he's cold, Bruce. He's yes and he's no. This is a situation, again, where if Hakuho's out, then his chance of maintaining his rank, I think, is good. The last time we did a Banzuke podcast, we all made fun of him. We're like, haha, Ichinojo is down at Maegashira 4. How's he going to get back? And then he turns around and he reels off 14 wins to push Hakuho all the way to Senshuraku and gets promoted as high as it's possible to get promoted. So given who we're talking about, I think 8 wins would be a great result for him just to get some consistency. And especially with Tochinoshin pushing hard, if he can just maintain that rank, I think it's a big win. If he gets 10, then he's officially on an Ozeki run. And I think that would add a little bit more intrigue. We'd be looking for him to challenge next time. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Andy, thoughts on the Mongolian behemoth Ichinojo?
I really, really do hope that he takes this advantage, this opportunity with all of the upper echelon having so many of their own issues, their own health issues, that he's able to kind of capitalize on that and move forward. Haruth did report that he's at his highest weight ever, which is a little bit of a concern for me because you've got his back has been an issue, and so when you're at Maegashira 4 going up against the likes of Tochiozan and Nishikigi, guys who are not necessarily going to be like 15 days of full-on action. That's one thing. Being up at Sekewake 1 with guys who are trying to, number one, stay Ozeki, or trying to go for their first Yusho, or trying to prove themselves worthy of their new Ozeki rank. I think that he's going to be challenged, as well as he's going to have an opportunity, but also challenged by all of the others around him who want to be able to capitalize as well.
Yep, cool. So let's pivot from the lofty heights of the top end of the Banzuke into where I think the actual trench warfare battlefield is going to break out. For fans who are limited to primarily the NHK highlight feed on a daily basis, which is a quality show, we love it and we all watch it, but there's a division, the third division, Makushita, which frankly is some of the most brutal sumo that you could ever watch. These people are on the cusp of becoming Sekitori, of having a paycheck, of having all these privileges. And the Joy-Jin up at the top of Makushita is some of the most insane sumo that I have ever seen. And coming into this tournament, we have an especially dangerous, volatile mix at the Joy-Jin. And it's I would encourage everyone listening to the podcast or watching it to check out our daily ones to watch, which are the lower division matches. So if you guys can, pick off a couple of people that you like in Makushita. It can be Joy, it can be further down. Andy, why don't you give us a start and talk about a few?
Honestly, and I think I've heard Josh mention his name before, but Koto Kamatani has like really impressed me. His only 2 losses in the last tournament were to guys who are now Sekitori. He lost to Churanomi and Seiro, and he has several Kimarete tools. He's not really just he's primarily, it seems, Oshi, but he's Oshi moving forward, which to me is a big departure from the kind of I don't know, Takakeisho versus Abi type, but he's solid. So, and then his career has progressed. It's been steady rises. Yep. Improving with just a few 3 and 4 tournaments thrown in there, and so he's had a pretty quick rise. So I'm looking at Koto Kamatani. Hoshoryu is another really good one, but he's also pretty light still. And so in their head to head, Koto Kamatani was able to really pick him off. So I'm looking forward to seeing that division. I don't think that Jokoryu is going to be able to bring his way back out of there, because it has gotten really intense. Toyo Hibiki is a little bit further down there. Chiyotori, like there's a lot of guys who they want to get back, but there are newer, younger guys who are, I think, going to stop them.
The hyper-aggressive younger guys are really sort of busting up the party for the old guys trying to get back. Josh, you were early to the party talking about the quality of sumo and the intensity of the rikishi at this level. What are you watching? What are you looking at here coming into the May tournament?
Well, firstly, I think to Andy's point, what's really interesting, Koto Kamatani is the son of the stable master, Sarugatake. And I think also, Andy, to your point, he's done a really good job, the stable master, I should say, of developing rikishi who have a really vastly differing style profiles. And I think that that's something that is kind of a feather in his cap, to be able to bring up guys that are Oshi guys and then also see someone like a Koto Eko get promoted up to Makunuchi. I think it's a good look. But in terms of the ones to watch, I mean, let's talk about some of the guys at the top, and then maybe later we look a little further down. But for me, ones to watch is about who is a legitimate prospect at this point right now. And so to that end, I've actually started going through the old posts when we started this whole series like 2 years ago and trying to revise a ceiling for some of these guys based on the broader information that we now have. So watch for that at some point, maybe in the next week. But that's something I'm going through right now. So I think you have maybe 3 groups in the top of Makushita. You have these legitimate prospects. You have declining veterans, and Andy referenced a couple of those guys. And then you have guys who maybe will not end up being more than Makushita Juryo Yo-Yo guys. So I'd bracket like Kizen Ryu or like Aqua maybe in that category. Yep. Maybe there's a 4th category of folks like Goku Shindo or the Onami brothers who, like, if they settle in, they could be Juryo guys, behind their more talented brother, Wakata Kakage. And that's great too. So from the legit prospects, though, the ones to watch this basho for me, certainly Koto Kamatani, who we just spoke about, Ichi Yamamoto, Ryuko, who John Gunn talked about a lot, Hoshoryu, Kazaki Yumi, who's Churanumi's little brother, or maybe his big brother, I can't remember. If any of those 5 guys gets promoted, I'll be excited. You can probably also put Takano Fuji in that category, although he hasn't really excelled yet at the Juryo level, and he hasn't really excited a lot of people with his sumo or his behavior necessarily. I think the prevailing wisdom, though, is that he'll make the top division eventually if he can keep his hands to himself. So 6 of the top 8 guys in the division are super exciting, and I think that it's one of the most hotly contested Makushita situations in a while as a result of that.
Yeah, I think that you brought up Ryuko. I think that he's definitely someone that I'm going to be looking for to contest for the Yusho this time around. Mm-hmm. He seems to really have it together right now. So let's talk about some other people that are sort of below the Joijin. Specifically, Naya had a great tournament last time. Everyone expects, things out of him because of his lineage, being Kaio's descendant. Kaio, sorry. Is the hype getting to this kid? Is it wrecking his head, Josh?
I don't think so. He had a great tournament last time. I would have thought maybe in the beginning it did, because he came on the scene at the same time as Hoshoryu, and Hoshoryu really took off. And Naya he had some middling tournaments, and he's kind of bouncing around between Makushita, Sandame for a minute. But he really came on in the last tournament, and I think he's positioned pretty well down there, Makushita 22, because he's outside that like automatic promotion range. If you go 7-0 and win the Yusho, you get automatically promoted up to Juryo if you're Makushita 15 or higher. And so I think in a slightly perverse way, maybe that takes the pressure off a little bit. He can just go out there, he can compete, get hopefully a strong Kachikoshi that will vault him up, into this group within 1 or 2 tournaments, and he can go on from there. But I think he looks good. I've been impressed with him lately, and he doesn't need to be on the same timeline as anybody else. It's the old cliche. He just needs to do his sumo, and he needs to get there.
Andy, thoughts about Naya?
Yeah, he's going to have his own challenges this tournament against a very, very, I guess, up-and-coming crop of wrestlers, and he's at his peak so far. But those, just, I guess, a steady rise rather than really expecting 7-0 runs or anything like that. I think he should be looking for more along the lines of 4-3 from here at this point. I'll be very, very surprised if he's contending at this point, because there are
he's not there yet.
So many people up there.
This division's too brutal for that to be the case. So just to put a note in here, because I know some fans are interested, Ura is still out, likely to be out for a while. There was a post recently to Twitter where they mentioned that it was mentioned that rather than going for an early return, Ura is going for perfection in his healing process. So it will take what it takes, was the gist of this Twitter post. So we may not see Ura for a while, and I think everyone's okay with that after the sort of brutal destruction of his knee this year. Josh, anyone else you want to talk about before we get down into Sandanme?
Yeah. I was just going to go right into Sandanme.
Well, let's go to Sandanme then. I love Sandanme.
I'm excited to talk about Roga, who I think is a very Bruce kind of rikishi. I don't know why. I just feel like Roga is very much in your lane. A fraction of Terano Fuji was too much for everyone in that division until he came up against Roga, who is a real prospect, Futogoyama Bea, top prospect, I guess you'd say, of that stable, and he just looks like a beast. And I think sometimes, like when a dude's still in Zambara and he doesn't have the top knot yet, like it almost makes him look a little bit more fearsome. But I want to see what he's got in his locker when he comes up against more real prospects himself, because you don't always get that, especially in the bottom 2 divisions. So I'm excited about him. The only other guy that I bring up from Sandanme, who I think is kind of interesting, is we have a Sandanme Tsukedashi this tournament, who's someone generally qualifies by virtue of their amateur performances at college level or what have you. So they don't have to start at the bottom of the Banzuke with everybody else. And so this guy's name is Shiraishi, comes from Tamanoe Bea. Not a stable that's had a great number of Sekitori in recent years. Azumaryu is the main guy right now. So he's going to start at Sandanme 100, and he's got some interesting scalps from his amateur days. He's put dirt as a kid on a number of guys who are currently up in the top division, a number of the tadpoles, actually. So, over there at Sumo Forum, a lot of the guys over there have kind of covered him breathlessly as he attempts to make his a good debut. So hat tip to those guys for their coverage so far, and let's see what happens with him this tournament.
So you mentioned Terunofuji. Of course, there's a lot of fan interest in Terunofuji as well. There should be. He looked like hell in Osaka, but his size and the fact that he still remembers what sumo is seems to have allowed him to go 7-0 and lose the Yusho in a playoff to Roga. But you have to wonder if it's going to be a little more challenging for him in Sandanme. Andy, thoughts about Terunofuji?
Yeah, this is where, exactly what you said. He's coming back, obviously, from that injury. He was able to get the 7 wins, but it wasn't a breeze. So here is where... was it 7 wins?
It was 7-0. And okay. It was a playoff against Roga.
That's right. With the 1 loss. And I'm sure that this is where he's going to start probably picking up a couple of losses during the week instead of just at the end, which may be good for his recovery rather than just zooming back up. And then hitting a wall. It would probably be best if he has a bit of a slower rise here. This is the range where he's around Tarakio's range, so we may be able to see. That would be an interesting matchup. I know Tarakio's kind of been bouncing around a little bit.
Tarakio's looked very poorly recently.
Mm-hmm. So we may be able to get a very interesting matchup out of there, but I'm hopeful that he'll be able to pick up maybe 5-2, and maybe not necessarily well, we obviously want to see him challenged and not just kind of pushing everybody out of the way like Kaiju versus I don't know, the guys down in the lower divisions in like Jonakuchi or something, but he should hopefully have a little bit of a arrested rise.
Hopefully.
Can I just say on that topic, I think all 3 of us are guilty of this because it's super funny. But sometimes when we're writing match reports, we'll be like Shohozan versus Yoshikaze. It's gonna be like a drunken barroom brawl. And I think the reality is, if you watch Terunofuji in the last tournament, that was actually a drunken brawl. The reality of a drunken brawl, unfortunately, is sometimes a lot more sad than we romanticize a drunken brawl the way we want to see it.
It was kind of sad, and it was your heart goes out to the guy because he's not ready to give up yet, but boy, it looks like maybe he should consider it. So on that melancholy note, let us transition into our always regrettable predictions. Josh, because you are, we always know what Andy's going to do. You're going to go first on your predictions.
Oh God. So I think if Kakuryu is fit, you kind of make him the automatic favorite by default, but he finished poorly last time, so he may have just need to play himself back into match fitness. But I wouldn't sleep actually on a healthy Goedo because he looked so good last time, and he's actually, believe it or not, on his longest run of Kachikoshi at the moment since he became an Ozeki. So he's 33, and I think with his style of sumo, which is speed-based, you'd think if he's going to do it again, it'll be sooner rather than later. So it's kind of conservative and kind of soft and kind of weird, and it's going to be the opposite of what Andy does, but I'm going to go with probably the 2 highest-ranking guys who are on the Banzuke.
Okay, Andy, let's have it.
All right. Takayasu is going to be pushing for the Yusho, but it's going to be Kuroshokiku picking up number 2.
Oh my God!
But I also do see Arawashi starting to climb back up. I'll be excited to see him hopefully toward the top of Juryo next go around. But yeah, I got Koto Shogiku picking up number 2.
That would, you know what? Koto Shogiku getting the Emperor's Cup would be the second most amazing and controversial thing that might happen on Senshiraku. So I'll close it out by saying I believe Tochinoshin picks up his 10. I believe Hakuho starts but doesn't finish, and I think it's a Kakeru Yusho. So with that, let's say goodbye. Thank you everyone for joining us for the podcast for this May tournament. Thank you very much, and remember, for sumo, it's Tachiai.